In recent times, airBaltic has been announcing its preparations and intentions to take its company public with an IPO, which stands for Initial Public Offering. This moves a private company into the public market with the average person able to invest in the company through the purchase of shares. For anyone who doesn't already know this, it's essentially being able to buy, hold, and even sell a small piece of the company. And so I'm somewhat considering doing this for myself, but is it a good investment? Or will the airline go bankrupt one day and leave its investors with worthless shares? Well, I thought since I would be doing some of this research for myself, why not try and make a Lithuania Explained video about it all and share what I've learned? I'm sure some people out there might also be considering investing in the airline as well. Yeah, I know, they are a Latvian company, but they have a decent amount of flights out of Vilnius too, and even Palanga Airport, and their presence in Lithuania only continues to grow. So why not? Let's look at airBaltic and some of the pros and cons to a future investment in the carrier. Well, right after the introduction. If you're looking for a tech job in Vilnius, check out today's sponsor, Sigli. There's more info at the end of this video. First, a little bit of background. airBaltic President and CEO Martin Gauss announced earlier in 2024 that after the successful development of airBaltic in the first half of 2024, we are now, together with banks and international advisors, in an intense preparation for listing airBaltic at the stock exchange. Gauss says that the purpose of the IPO is to increase the company's capital and attract investors, which will increase the company's value. It's planned that the potential IPO will enable not only financial investors, but also private retail investors to become shareholders of airBaltic. I mean, yeah, that's all pretty obvious. Going public is always about getting more money to grow the business. That's not earth-shattering news. But then how is the airline actually performing these days when it comes to the hard numbers? Well, I don't want to get into the airline-specific metrics here. You know, things like load factor, passenger seat numbers, airline seat kilometers. But I will say that pretty much across the board, all of the good numbers are bigger than the year before, which is definitely promising. And when it comes to money, airBaltic says that it generated a profit of 34 million euros in 2023. Its total revenue that year was about 668 million euros, and if I'm doing my math correctly, that's a profit margin of 5%. You know, it's not huge, but when it comes to airlines, well, at least it's not a loss, like others. Oh, and maybe it's at this point that I should say that I'm not a financial analyst and I could be wrong in my reporting. And so just to be clear, do not consider this professional financial advice in any way. But okay, 2024 isn't over yet, and it will still be a little while before they release their full 2024 figures. But again, all the numbers we want to see going up seem to be going up. The airline says that its net profit during the busy summer season, which is the third quarter, was 40.3 million euros. It also says that it's on track to bring in a revenue of more than 750 million euros, which itself is 82 million euros more than the year before. Not bad. And so year to year, things are looking good. But there's one big thing the airline doesn't want to advertise too loudly. It's debt. Because looking at its latest report from September 2024, it's carrying over €1 billion in debt. Now, most of it is considered long-term liability, and that doesn't need to be repaid in the next year. But then there is still over 324 million euros needing to be repaid within the next year, because it's considered current liability. And as mentioned in a previous video I made about the airline, an aviation expert is of the opinion that the airline has to collapse at some point due to the high interest of the money it's borrowing. So yeah, I suppose that despite the positive numbers, debt and a high interest rate is definitely something you'd want to factor in. But I do think that there's even more to consider about the airline situation when evaluating whether it's a good investment. First, let's look at the cons. In addition to that big pile of debt that it's sitting on, the first con that I can think of is a low birth rate across the Baltic nations. And so without sufficient immigration or a boost in the birth rate, well, the populations of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia could fall. Sure, some of this has been mitigated by an influx of migrants and refugees, but will this level off at some point? And then if the war in Ukraine comes to an end, which would be a great thing, how many of those refugees will go home? And if there isn't enough travel from residents, will there be enough business and tourism travel from outsiders to make up for this? I guess these are big ifs and hypotheticals, but I think it's definitely important to consider in the longer term. And the next thing is the hopeful and eventual launch of airBaltic, that high-speed rail connection linking the major cities of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Will airBaltic eliminate the need or appeal of flying airBaltic between the capitals? Well, maybe not for Vilnius Tallinn travel, But, I mean, actually it comes pretty close, doesn't it? Especially after you factor in travel to the airport, check-in, security, boarding, taxing, etc., etc. The third issue is the airline's all Airbus A220 fleet, which is all powered by Pratt & Whitney geared turbofan engines. These new and efficient engines were supposed to save airlines money, but, well, they've faced a lot of problems, and aircraft have had to sit on the ground for long periods of time, waiting for spare engine parts. In the latest airBaltic report in September, the airline said that the engine shortage is only increasing, and that engine issues will continue for the next 1 to 2 years. While it looks like there is hope that this whole ordeal will end eventually, well, for now it's an ongoing problem. And finally, one has to think about how war in the region could really disrupt operations. No, I don't think anyone wants to think about this, and I do believe that most of us feel safe where we are in the Baltics, being under the impression that Putin doesn't want to invade and doesn't want to start anything with any NATO partner. But, well, the world feels more unpredictable than ever these days, and regional conflict would definitely impact airBaltic's operations. But again, that is a huge hypothetical. But let's end on a more positive note, the pro side. Reasons to invest in airBaltic, other than positive trending performance. Well, airBaltic essentially has a monopoly when it comes to air travel between the Baltics. You won't find any other regular service airline connecting Riga with Vilnius and Tallinn, or connecting Vilnius and Tallinn with regularly scheduled commercial passenger flights. This speed of travel is ideal for business travelers in the Baltics who might want to minimize their travel time and make quick trips to other Baltic capitals. And while I listed Rail Baltica as a negative, well, maybe high-speed connectivity between Vilnius and Riga and their airports means that travelers can more easily take airBaltic flights that don't originate in their home city. For example, most airBaltic flights are out of Riga. So with Rail Baltica, myself as a Vilnius resident, maybe I'd be able to take a train to Riga airport instead of flying out of Vilnius airport. Well, okay, maybe that is a bit of a stretch, but hey, it is only 90 minutes from Kaunas to Riga, and that sounds nice. And it's even less for residents of Panevėžys. So perhaps in some cases, Rail Baltica might actually help airBaltic. It's a bit of a side note, but it has always been my opinion that airlines should also invest in high-speed rail, because rather than compete with another mode of transportation, they should support it and find ways to integrate it into their networks and make money off of it. So yeah, airBaltic could, or maybe should, include train tickets as part of their itineraries in the same way that Air France and Lufthansa do with their national rail companies. And then going back to the war thing, well, I guess the regional conflict situation as it is could go the other way, and a peace deal could end conflict in Ukraine. This might eventually lead to airspace opening up again, and airBaltic having more places to fly and more passengers to serve. And then the next thing, which maybe is just my own opinion, but I think there's the possibility that the airline could simply be too big to fail. As the airline CEO states, airBaltic plays an important role in the region's GDP growth and connectivity. At the same time, the airline facilitates investment flows, supports services, creates jobs, and generates tax revenues that have a significant impact on the much broader economic picture. I think because of all that, politicians would be very reluctant to let airBaltic collapse. I also think Lithuanian and Estonian governments see the value that the airline provides to their capital cities as well, and might just find ways to rescue it if it were in trouble. But finally, as someone who has flown airBaltic a few times each year for the last few years, I would say that they have a fairly good product. The passenger experience has been positive for me with pretty comfortable seats and decent pre-ordered food. I think their in-flight experience is good, and their customer support has been very good in my experiences when contacting them about issues. I think that their small size has allowed them to try new things more easily, like accepting cryptocurrency, raising money through NFTs, and hopefully, eventually getting Starlink in-flight high-speed connectivity on their aircraft. I would just hope that some of the positive experience isn't eroded away by cost-cutting and the need to be more profitable for shareholders. But well, I guess on that front, we'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, that's, I think, everything I can think of when it comes to airBaltic's situation. Would I invest in them? I still don't know. I suppose if a share was like 10 euros, well, maybe I would buy like 50 and then see how things go. But should you buy them? Well, obviously I don't feel comfortable answering that. But now you do have this video and my list of pros and cons to consider. So good luck in making a decision. This video was sponsored by Sigli, who is on the hunt for talented IT and marketing experts to join their team, especially here in Lithuania. Sigli is a digital development services company with its office located in Vilnius. They're on the hunt for more people to work in sales and project management, and if you know another European language, that's even better. Check out sigli.com to learn more about their career opportunities. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.